Hello and welcome back to Flashy Tools. In this video we're going to finish looking at the tools, namely looking at the properties of the tools that we can affect, and then at the end of the video I'll issue two tasks to help you guys put into practice what we've learned from the previous videos. Okay, let's get started. So what I'm first going to do is show you the properties of the brush tool, and to emphasize on how these properties differ I'm just going to start by creating a small box. Okay, now if we go down to the brush tool, as well as this properties window over here, you should also be able to see that there are some small icons down at the bottom of the tool window. So let's start over here first of all. Smoothing is the primary property that you're able to change here, as well as the color. Now what the smoothing does is pretty much affect how much the program will smooth out what you've just painted. So if I were to draw a rough line, you can see it's all jagged, and once I let go it stays fairly jagged. Now if I was to turn that smoothing back up to 100, oh, there we go, and draw the same line, it's jagged, but then Flash will smooth it out for us. Let's just turn that back down to 50, nice happy medium. Now these icons down here, we've already looked at the brush size and the brush shape. Next is the brush mode. We start off on paint normal, which paints exactly how you'd expect it to. It might be easy if I change the color, let's say red. It paints over everything indiscriminately. However, if we change that brush mode to paint fills only, it will only affect the fills and it will completely and utterly ignore the strokes. Let me show you. I'll just increase the stroke size there. And if I go here and let go, you can see it paints all over the blue but completely leaves out the black strokes. Just deselect that. Okay, next we have paint behind, which will put it to the absolute back of the stage. There is a visual hierarchy, so symbols and things like that and objects will normally be pushed to the front. But if you change the brush mode to paint behind, it will paint at the absolute furthest back position on the stage. We also have paint selection. So if we select our fill and then go back to our brush and draw, it will only paint on the fill. Now, just to bear in mind, if you select a stroke, it won't paint over the stroke. It only affects fills. And lastly, paint inside. That's pretty much going to be the same as the paint selected. Basically, it will only affect the one color. So if we've started drawing inside of that blue box, we also have another shape. Let's make this color green. We start painting inside the red and then move on into the blue. It'll only paint inside that red. And again, if we start painting inside the blue, move over into the red, and outside of both of the objects, it will only paint in that blue. So those are the different brush modes for the paintbrush. Now if we just have a quick look at the pencil tool, the only thing that we really have to look at here is we already know the color, we already know the stroke size. And the smoothing here is grayed out. That's because we have not as much control over how smooth and how jagged the strokes will be kind of drawn. What we do have, however, is this down here. Now we're able to have it smooth. Let me just decrease the size of that stroke for a moment. There we go. And let me get rid of these objects. Okay, so we have smooth, where it does a fairly good job of smoothing it out. We have ink, which will smooth it out even more. And then we have straighten, which will actually keep it fairly jagged. Another function of the freeform tool, as well as increasing and decreasing the size, start by making an object, is we're also able to affect some aspects down here, such as envelope. So we're able to take parts of the object and fold them in. We're able to distort, so actually shift the perspective of the object. Scale is the one that we've already been using beforehand. It's basically just to increase and decrease the size. And then rotate and skew. So we're able to take whole bars and skew the perception of the object. And also if you hold down on a corner, not on the sides, but on a corner, you're also able to turn the object around. Okay, we also have paint bucket. Now the paint bucket has this option down here, which is gap size. Now normally it's set to don't close gaps. However, you are able to change it to closing large gaps. Now what that enables us to do is if we draw an object whose ends don't quite meet, that is not what we were looking for, whose ends don't quite meet, we should be able to close them. So see, there's just a small part that hasn't quite met each other. You should be able to see there that it's taken that into consideration with the close large gaps option selected, and it's stopped it there. It's not carried on filling in the rest of the screen. It's understood that we wanted this to be a circle, but we haven't quite made it there yet. And lastly but not least, we have the eraser tool. Now this has the same sort of functions as the brush. So we have erase normal, erase only the fills, turn down the size of this, maybe a little bit more. I'll just zoom in quickly. This won't affect the strokes at all. It also has erase lines, so this will get rid of strokes, but not the fills. Erase selected fills, so again, we have a fill selected. Let me draw another object. And then go back to the eraser. So as being as we have this green fill selected here, it won't affect any other fill, only the fill that we've selected. And then we have erase inside, which means if we started off in this circle, let me start by deselecting. If we started off in this circle, it won't affect this other nearly circle. And that's pretty much it for the properties of the different items. One thing I would like to mention is the pen tool up here, which we didn't cover in the last video. If I quickly zoom out. Okay, so the pen tool is something that draws in strokes just the same as the pencil. But if you're not confident in your freehand drawing ability, and you still want to produce things like curves, then you're able to do so by clicking, holding down, and pulling across, and making curved or straight lines. So it's a very, very good tool if you want to make custom outlines for characters or all sorts of different images. Let's just click on the beginning point to, well, let's extend this a little bit. Then click on the beginning point, and that will close your selection. So your pen tool will stop now. If we go onto our selection tool, you can see this is the strange shape that we've made. We're still able to affect it and edit it the same as every other stroke that we've come across so far, such as the pencil tool and the line tool and the strokes that goes around objects. We're able to double click and select the entire thing and move the entire thing as we'd like.